What I'm going to talk to you about is safety at the pump and what Husky has encountered. I'm going to say right off the bat, we're all tired of COVID. The key thing that happened early on is that the CDC came out and they were focusing on this transmission of this disease through contact. So early on, we had a lot of customers of ours that were asking for information about how do we clean, sanitize, and so forth. And the information just wasn't out there early on. So what they decided to do was take some things upon themselves. They went out and they looked at personal hygiene. Everybody got the, wash your hands, clean the surfaces, and all those bulletins that went out to the workplace, also went out to our C-stores. And then these companies decided to start putting sanitization procedures in place. And what was found was very interesting. And we'll get into that in more detail later in these slides. So the CDC came out and they immediately worked with the EPA, and they came out what they call a class or list in chemical list that would essentially kill the coronavirus. That list, I have a link here on the slide. That list is available, easily available to everybody on the website. But basically, that list of chemical comes down to 4 basic chemicals, and I have them listed right here. We have the alcohols, which are 70% alcohol. That's going to be your hand sanitizers. Hand sanitizers are going to be typically gel-based so that they stay on your skin for over 30 seconds. Then we're going to have the hydrogen peroxides with different levels of peroxide level. Those are easily available as well. I do not have any listed peroxide, I'll call it name brands, but those are available as well. Then you have the quaternary ammonias and then the sodium hypochlorites. Those are the chemicals that are most widely available and listed on the Class N chemicals of COVID-19. So what those chemicals are, and those are the ones, like I said, were most often used, are chlorine-containing chemicals. And that is where we come into some key issues when it comes to cleaning and sanitizing at the pump. Mainly because, and I'm going to list out some materials at Hanging Hardware, mainly because Hanging Hardware is made out of aluminum-based alloys. Now, when I'm talking about Hanging Hardware, I'm talking about everything from the dispenser on down to the car. So we're talking the hoses, the safety brakes, the swivels, the nozzles. I'm obviously talking about the safety brakes, swivels, and nozzles, and not necessarily the hoses. Those are all made out of some grade of aluminum. The aluminum alloys, A356 is the most common. It's a sand-casted alloy. You also see some A6061 alloys. You'll see some A380 alloys and some 2000 series alloys out there at the pump. Different manufacturers will use different alloys for different products, but mostly the nozzles is what I'm concerned about, because that's the part that the customer or patron of the C-store is going to be actually using. They're going to be putting their hands on it. And that particular alloy is typically A356 or an A380 alloy. Why is this all important? Well, you have quaternary ammonias, which are chlorine containing, and then you have your hypochlorites, which are such as Clorox or bleach. And by the way, quaternary ammonia, that would be like 409. Those alloys contain chlorine. And chlorine is very detrimental to aluminum. So I'm going to say that right outright. Depending on the concentrations of the chlorines, the aggressiveness of attack on aluminum will vary. So what's our problem is that early on, everybody kept coming out with, when I mean everybody, I'm talking about the C-stores, they're coming out with their own sanitization procedures, and they're going by the recommended CDC guidelines, and they are using these chlorinated cleaners on the pump. And some C-stores actually were using them at very high rates. Once an hour, maybe after every patron, but they were using them extremely high rates. When that happens, they spray this nozzle down or they wipe it down, and I'm going to say the water that's in the sanitizer, that'll evaporate away or it gets wiped off, but the chlorine stays behind. And then when the chlorine stays behind, it essentially remains on the aluminum and it begins to attack the aluminum. So what I'm going to show you on this next slide is really interesting. So Husky was being confronted with this issue early on. We had multiple C-store owners and companies that were sending us products or calling us and saying, hey, we've had some nozzles that weren't shutting off. And we were having them at a very rapid rate. All of a sudden, within about 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, right after I'll say the mainstream COVID-19 was coming down, right around March, April. So we got right on this right away. And we started testing these chemicals to find out what was going on regarding our nozzles. So what we found is the various quaternary ammonias, which chloride containing, were attacking the 356 alloy very fast. And what we're going to show you in this next video is what actually happens at a microscopic level. So you're going to see a video about a minute long. That minute-long video is going to show you a micrograph of aluminum. Inside that micrograph, you're going to see light areas and dark areas. The dark areas are going to be silicon containing, and the lighter areas are going to be the matrix of aluminum. And when this drop of sodium hypochlorite gets on the surface, so it'll be on the surface for about, I think the video is about a minute. So when it's on that surface, you'll begin to see it attack the silicon aluminum matrix. And it's pretty interesting. At the 45-second mark, the 55-second mark, you're going to actually see a flake of aluminum salt. I'll call it an aluminum salt because it's aluminum and chlorine containing item. And it's going to break off. And this is what's happening microscopically. So, and then I'll show you a photograph of what a nozzle looks like after it's been sprayed down with these sanitizers for a long period of time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And the video should start, I believe. And you can see bubbles starting to form right on the left-hand side and a couple of other areas. These bubbles that are forming are what I want you to focus on. Those are gaseous bubbles. They're going to contain chlorine gas and hydrogen gases. And you can see on the left-hand side, right about the 45-second mark, you're going to see a piece flake off of the actual matrix of the aluminum. And this is happening, by the way, this magnification is about 400x magnification on your screen, just to let you know. And you're going to start to see this happening all over the nozzle when I show you the photograph. And right there on the left-hand side, where I'm pointing, if my pointer is actually on the screen, you're going to see this break off. And that's it. So that just took about a minute. And this particular concentration was the standard, slightly above the standard concentration that is required for sodium hypochlorite to kill bacteria. The next slide here is going to show you what happens. So underneath the guard of the nozzle, you get this buildup of corrosion, and it stays there. It doesn't get wiped off. It doesn't get taken off or anything like that. And what happens is down here in the lower portion, when you get to the poppet stem, that is where I am concerned as a quality manager. What we do is we get excessive corrosion in that area. That corrosion breaks off, it grabs onto the poppet, and over time, that corrosion, which is a salt, it's like sand, it will build up on the poppet, gets into the poppet, and when it gets into that poppet, you will have the poppet stick open. So the problem is that this corrosion builds up so excessively that the poppet sticks open, and now you have a safety issue where the nozzle will not shut off, and then you're getting gasoline on your patron's feet, car, and even worse, could be a major accident. So Husky investigated this pretty thoroughly. We tested many chemicals, and we came down to one basic rule of thumb is to not use chlorinated products on our products. So do not use the quaternary ammonias, do not use the hypochlorites. And you got to really read the label of active ingredients on these bottles before you use them. It's so important. So what we recommend to do is use the alcohol-based products, which is going to have 70% alcohol. We also recommend you to use standard soap and water to clean off the product first, to basically get the dirt off, and then do the sanitization. Peroxides work as well. They may take a little bit longer to do their job, but they also can work. So in closing, I want to say a few things. Not only did we experience this issue, but so did dispenser manufacturers. Gilbarco is one of them. I'm going to call them out. You can go to their website, and they will give you exactly what they recommend to do to kill the virus and clean their products. You can also go to Consumer Reports, and you can go to the CDC guidelines, which I left links here as well. There is a Husky service bulletin that is out on our website. You can go there as well and see our service bulletin. And with that, I want to thank PEI for allowing me to tell you some of the safety issues at the pump.